There was a big, big man in a tiny little house. He had a big chunk of cheese and a tiny little mouse. And the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they liked each other. They looked after one another in their tiny little house. And the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they would watch the television on the couch that's in their house. And they never disagree about what to watch on their TV. And they eat peanuts and drink tea, and they both sit so comfortably with the tiny little mouse upon the big man's knee. And the big, big man, he would cup his giant hand, and the mouse would hop right on, and then gently skip along the big man's sleeve and up the shoulder to retrieve a tiny chunk of cheese. And around the big man's neck he would run, and they both thought that that was fun, and the man would laugh with glee and pinch another piece of cheese for his furry little friend. And the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they would walk right out the door of their tiny little house. And the tiny little mouse on the big man's hat would sit, and all the people that would see them would just stare and wouldn't quit. Because the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they look so odd together. But like a feather in a hat, the tiny mouse just sat there on the big hat's brim. And all the people that would see him would just grin right back at him. And the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they would take the groceries that they bought back to their tiny little house. And they put all the food away, and they play checkers once a day, while they discuss the daily news, and neither one gets mad at all if it's his time, win or lose. Because the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they are friends through thick and thin, and even though they both have been questioned by more than just a few who say that's not what you should do. But the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they don't want to hurt each other. So they look after one another in their tiny little house. And the big, big man and the tiny little mouse, they just want the world to know that with tolerance we grow in very special ways. So wave and say hi to your neighbor, and you'll do yourself a favor when you make someone your friend. These are the words of Ezar.